Okay, so back to administrative stuff. Does everyone have problem set 2 at this point? Okay. An observation, the lectures for this course are being webcast, so that should produce a result that involves this kind of image along with my voice. If you'd like to view or listen to those things, those can be found by going now to webcast.berkeley.edu for the first for lectures 1 and 3. And I've also put a direct link to the webcasts for this course on the VSpace page. So if you go on the left of your browser in VSpace, there will be a link that says something like webcasts. Okay. Questions about administrative stuff so far? All right, just a reminder that I'd like all of you to be continuing to scrupulously maintain your expenditure diaries. So we'll collect those in a couple of weeks. We're trying to get 1 month worth of data on your expenditure habits, and we don't want sort of gaps because you forgot about it or got lazy or whatever. So please try to maintain those. If you're a person who came to class late or somehow hasn't gotten the expenditure diaries, you'll find instructions for those diaries as well as the forms you can use for that on the VSpace website. So all you need to do is go to VSpace and do that. And again, we'll collect those in a couple of weeks. Okay, questions? All right, so let me go ahead and get started. We talked last time about consumer preferences. We began our exploration of what it is that people want. And we're going to continue that discussion today. I'd like to start by pointing to a paraphrase that Albert Einstein made of Alfred Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer was one of the great 19th century German philosophers. Any philosophers in the room, by the way? Okay, I don't have to fear contradiction too much then. So he was one of the great 19th century German philosophers. He's responsible, or largely responsible, for introducing the idea of will into philosophic discourse. And so he was very concerned with what causes people to act. And one of his ideas is that there's a force called your will, which causes you to act. And then that raises the question, what is it you will will to do? And Einstein's paraphrase of Schopenhauer suggests 2 things. That you will you'll pursue your will in order to pursue wants. But those wants are primitive. In this paraphrase, we'll sort of read it backwards. A human can very well do what he wants. So again, the person is taking actions to try to do what he wants. But he cannot will. He cannot choose to change the things that he wants. Okay, so in our language, we might think about those wants as being something like consumers' preference orderings. And consumers are going to, those are subjective, we talked about that last time, but consumers are going to take those preferences as given. That you're endowed somehow with desires for certain kinds of food or clothing or services, and you sort of take those as given. And then you operate within the framework that the world offers you in order to sort of satisfy those wants or to maximize your utility, given the preferences that you're endowed with. And so that's sort of the framework. That's the basic assumption of consumer theory and demand theory that we'll sort of take as given. And here's just a sort of philosophical reflection on that. Okay, so let me go ahead and proceed to talk a little bit about commodity spaces. This is going to be a little bit of a refresher. We discussed some of this stuff the first lecture. I'd like to remind you about some of the goods that we're going to think about consumers demanding in this course. So I'm going to often have sort of silly classroom examples. I'll have some more silly classroom examples today, but you should think very broadly about the possible things that consumers might desire. And we can categorize those into different groups. We'll think about here, this slide is called time, goods, and services. So, and you should think about time as sort of an important element in your decision-making process. So this is something we'll often neglect, especially in the early part of this course. But I want to give you an example and say, well, gee, would you like to drink 5 cups of coffee or 6 cups of coffee? An immediate question that sort of presents itself is, like, over what period of time are you proposing that I consume those cups of coffee? If it's, in 1 minute, I'll chug your 5 cups of coffee, that's kind of a strange way to think about this. You probably wouldn't want so much coffee within 1 minute. If it's the course of a day or a week, that becomes a much more reasonable sort of time frame to think about that in. Now, the models we're going to work with in this intermediate micro course are mostly not going to involve time. We'll introduce that later on in the course. We're sort of going to pretend, most of the time, or in the early part of the course, that people live for an instant. We're like mayflies. You're born, you drink your coffee and your wine, or you wear your food, and you eat your food and wear your clothing, and then you die. And that's the way we're going to sort of think of consumers behaving in the really simple models we've got. That's obviously silly, and economics has a lot to say about how people actually choose to allocate things over time. One trick I'll tell you right now is to think about food today, for example, as being different from food tomorrow. So when you're trying to think about how to solve your consumer problem, you might think, well, gee, how much coffee do I want to drink today, and how much do I want to save for a later period? And if you think about coffee today as one good, and coffee tomorrow as another good, and that sort of trick is at the heart of thinking about how consumer demand works over time. Okay, now another thing that's related to this issue of time, I'm raising this issue now because of the importance of it for thinking about the problem you've got in writing down your expenditure diaries. So you'll find when you look at your expenditure diaries, I expect, you're not going to be consuming the same bundles of stuff every day. So if you rent an apartment, for example, you probably pay your rent once a month. That doesn't mean you consume all your housing services on one day. Instead, what you're doing is you're purchasing a flow of services over an entire month. And so you should think of that as just as that, a flow of services over that period of time. Okay, let's see. So related to that, we want to think about this distinction that I've drawn previously between goods and between services. So let me continue with that. So let's think about some non-durable goods that we consume. So these are the kinds of things that mayflies might consume, that you really do just consume them and they're gone. So those include things like ice cream. You're not going to keep the ice cream around indefinitely if you have a scoop of ice cream. Or coffee, we talked about. Or newspaper has, there's yesterday's news isn't very valuable. So if you consume a newspaper by reading it, it's not very valuable later on. It's a non-durable consumption good. Okay, so those are examples. There's also services. So these are things that you might consume at a point in time, the service, but it's generated by some stock, some durable that generates those services over time. So the example I'm going to give you here, we've talked about some of these before. If you buy a car, again, it's probably best not to think about consuming a car. Instead, you buy a car because it allows you to drive around to different places and consume what we might call transportation services. So that's an example of a durable, the car, which doesn't necessarily have any sort of intrinsic value. You may not value the car for itself at all. You really just care about what you can do with the car, which is to drive yourself around. Houses provide housing services or shelter. It's a flow of services that you consume, over time, as opposed to eating a house or something. A furnace is another example of a consumer durable. You buy a furnace once, it lasts you for quite a number of years usually. A minor environmental example, trees are not something that we may maybe think about consuming. You can go to the nursery and buy a tree, certainly. But the thing we value trees for have more to do with the services they provide over time. They transpire and produce oxygen, they're attractive, they provide shade. There's a bunch of possibly complicated environmental services, and that's why we might like trees. There's some other examples here. A barber might provide haircutting services. Again, it's a service we're providing. We're not talking about going out and purchasing barbers ordinarily. Doctors similarly provide health services. Okay, and so it's, again, I'm just repeating myself here. It's the services here that generally are going to be valued. There may not be much intrinsic value to these durables in the absence of those services at all. Okay. Yes? So I would prefer to think of fuel. It may depend on what you're going to do with it. If you're using fuel as an input to drive your car, for example, it's not a durable. It's a variable cost. You may not value the fuel for its own sake. You're providing it because it's helping to provide transportation services, but it's not a lump. It's a flow. So I would say that's a consumer non-durable. Yeah. Good question. Okay. That might also be called sometimes something like an intermediate good. It's a good that provides a service that you actually care about. Okay. So we talked about durables. I want to talk now about preference orderings. And again, so the reason I'm reminding you about the difference between durables and non-durables is because we're usually going to define preferences over things that look like non-durable goods and over services, things that you really do consume at sort of a point in time. All right. Okay. So we talked last time about preference orderings, and we said that there's a commodity space. Each point in the commodity space is a consumption bundle, and we talked about consumers being able to describe their preferences between any pair of bundles. And so if we gave you a bundle that included being able to drive 300 miles and drink 5 cups of coffee, that's one possible bundle of consumption goods. Another bundle that involved less coffee but more driving would be a different consumption bundle, and you should be able to answer the question: would you like to have the bundle that has more driving and less coffee, or the bundle that has more coffee or less and less driving? Okay, now there's three valid answers to that question. Can anyone remember what they are? Yes.
A more than B, or B more than A, or they're both the same.
Yes, that's very good. So Eric says, I prefer the bundle with more driving, or I prefer the bundle with more coffee, or I'm indifferent between the two bundles. That's exactly right. So which sounds very sensible. The one thing you're not allowed to say is, I don't know which bundle I prefer. I really can't say. Because if you can't say what your preferences over the bundles are, certainly nobody else can. So we're going to assume that consumers are always capable of making a sort of a choice that actually reflects their underlying preferences over those goods. Okay, so we said that consumers are endowed with these kinds of preference orderings, and we said that for those preference orderings to be consistent, this is a definition of consistency, they had to satisfy 3 different properties. Anyone remind me what those properties are? Okay, what's her name? Sabrina. So Sabrina says transitivity, which is the second property we mentioned. Yes. Completeness is the first. Very good. And non-satiation is the third. Very good. So completeness, transitivity, non-satiation. So completeness, again, is the property that is related to this point we just made about consumers being able to say things. It's that you ought to be able to make statements about preference orderings for every possible pair of consumption bundles in the commodity space. That's completeness. What about transitivity? Somebody give me a statement of transitivity. Yes, okay. Kevin.
If A is preferred to B and B is preferred to C, then A is preferred to C.
Okay, very good. So it's just like stuff you saw in geometry involving triangles. If you prefer A to B and you prefer B to C, then you must prefer A to C. There's a transitive relationship between in the preference ordering. Yes.
What's your point, rock, paper, scissors?
How would rock paper scissors?
Because A is better than B, B is better than C.
Oh, I see. So there's a cycle in those preferences. So that's a case where if you were trying to get a consumer to assert preferences over rock, paper, and scissors, within the context of that game, it'd be a simplicity game that would violate transitivity. So, but again, remember that's a strategic game, not really a statement. So if you wanted to think about preferences, I'd say, well, gee, would you rather have a rock or some scissors? You can answer that question. Wait, which is it? You'd like to have the scissors?
Yeah.
Okay. You're not allowed to say I don't know. This is okay. And you'd rather have the scissors than the rock? Would you rather have the scissors or the paper? Okay, so we established a preference ordering for you, and so we got a partial ordering. Actually, we know that you prefer the scissors to the rock, and we know you prefer the scissors to the paper. We haven't asked you, and we don't know from the answers you've given so far whether you prefer the paper to the rock or not. So that's an additional question we'd have to ask if we want to get a complete preference ordering for you over those possible bundles. Okay. Other questions or observations? Okay. All right. So we've got this idea of consumers having preference orderings. That's great. That's useful. But actually, in a simple example, like what's your name again? The guy who likes scissors. What's your name? Sergey. Okay. So we've in a really simple commodity space with just 3 commodity bundles, rock, paper, scissors, we've almost elicited a complete preference ordering for Sergey. Most of the consumption bundles, most of the commodity spaces we work with have a much larger number of possible commodity bundles. And so getting an ordering between all possible pairs or all possible bundles is kind of impractical. If I wanted to ask you about your preferences over, I don't know, bread and cheese or something like that, I'd have to say, well, you have 2 slices of bread and an ounce of cheese, and I'd vary the amount of cheese, I'd vary the amount of bread. If it's a continuous commodity space, I have an uncountable number of commodity bundles I need to do these binary comparisons over. So it's not a very practical way in order to, let me say it differently. If we wanted to actually somehow record a consumer's preferences, recording a complete listing of the preference ordering is not a very practical way to go about it. Okay, so that's its practical difficulty. For most interesting commodity spaces, there are an infinite or even an uncountable number of bundles, and getting these pairwise comparisons is silly. Okay, all right, so there's an easier way, which we're going to turn our attention to next. A result we have is that if we have a consistent preference ordering, and this is one reason we insist on this notion of consistency involving completeness, transitivity, non-satiation. If we have consistent preference orderings, and again, let me remind you that is an assumption. This is not an assertion that all consumers must have consistent preference orderings. It's instead an assumption we're making about this preference orderings in order to be able to make progress here. If we have a consistent preference ordering, then we can represent that thing using something called an indifference map. And an indifference map is in turn comprised of something that we'll call indifference curves. All right, and what's an indifference curve? Well, an indifference curve is, we're going to draw lots of them on the board later, but right now think of it as a set. So an indifference curve is a set of consumption bundles where for every bundle in that set, the consumer is indifferent between one bundle and the other. Okay, so that's the definition of an indifference. And we're calling it a curve, but really it's better to think of it as a set. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do a little example here involving indifference curves. I need some, okay, let me do it this way. Everyone who likes coffee, please raise your right hand. Okay, and everyone who likes wine, now keep your hands up. Everyone who likes wine, please raise your left hand. Okay, now anyone who doesn't have both hands up, put your hands down. Well, almost all of you like coffee and wine. Okay, that's great. And so from among the people who have both arms in the air, I'd like a volunteer, please. Here, why don't you come forward? Yeah, you're front and center here. Yeah, come on up. I'm going to ask you some personal questions. I hope you don't mind sharing. Yes. Okay, what's your name? Wes. Wes, this is Wes. Wes, I'm going to ask you some personal questions. I hope you don't mind answering them. You can always demur if you do, but it'll screw up the example. Okay. I also need to fiddle with my computer here for just a moment. There we go. Okay, so we'll turn around and look behind you for a moment here. And what I'd like you to do is to notice the commodity space we have lined up here. So we've got a commodity space. You can look at either one. They should be identical. So we've got a commodity space involving wine and coffee. And I chose you because you're one of the people who asserted that they like both wine and coffee. Hence, satisfying presumably the axiom of non-satiation. Okay, so that's going to be important for this little experiment. Okay, so I'd like you to look at this commodity space. Think of the units here as representing, I guess, probably glasses of wine and cups of coffee. And I'd like you to take a moment and focus on this point right here. And so this point right here corresponds to a point. This is 2 cups of coffee and 2 glasses of wine. Now, harking back to an earlier thing I was saying in the lecture, you shouldn't think of like having to chug these one after the other. Think of yourself maybe like getting coupons for 2 cups of coffee and 2 glasses of wine that you consume over the course of the day or something like that. Okay, so not a really long period of time, but a day. We'll think of this consumption period being a day. Okay, so I want you to think about how much you like 2 cups of coffee and 2 cups of wine, and schedule them the way you want. You can have coffee in the morning, wine in the evening, or whatever. Okay, not before class, please. So I want you to think about that for a moment. And now, since you've asserted that you like both coffee and wine, I'm prepared to assert something about the preference orderings without you saying anything. I can say something about preference orderings here between this bundle marked by this blue dot and a bunch of other bundles on this graph. Okay, so in particular, there's a point, say right here. I'll put my pointer. There's a point here involving, it looks like about 1 cup of coffee and 1 glass of wine. And since you've asserted that you like more coffee and like more wine, you've satisfied non-satiation, I know that you prefer this point, the blue dot, to where my arrow's pointing by non-satiation. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and notice that. I'm going to record that about your preferences by putting a little black rectangle there. So everything that's black here the blue dot is referred to any bundle in the black square. Is that clear? Is that construction of that clear? Why does it have to be a rectangle? Why couldn't it be, say, a trapezoid with something going over here? Yeah, we can't. Non-satiation rules out all the bundles that have less of both commodities, but it doesn't rule out something like the point over here that has less coffee but more wine. We don't know yet whether West is indifferent between that point A or not. Okay, now there's something else we can do. Consider points up here to the northeast of the blue dot. Again, by non-satiation, we know that West prefers any point up here to the blue dot. He prefers more wine to less wine. He prefers more coffee to less coffee. Everything up here involves more wine and more coffee. So I can confidently assert that all these points up here are not, and here's where we're going, none of the points up here are in the same set of indifference, on the same indifference curve as the blue dot. Okay? So West has some locus of points where he's indifferent between 2 cups of coffee and 2 glasses of wine and something else. We haven't established what those are yet, but we know that none of the points up here and that none of the points down here are on that indifference curve. Okay, so let me go ahead and elicit a little bit more personal information from you, Wes. So I'd like to move my little pointer here, and I'm going to consider the possibility that we're going to give you 4 glasses of wine and 1 cup of coffee, about there. So considering this point where the arrow's pointing, that's 4 glasses of wine, 1 cup of coffee, and 2 of each. Which would you prefer?
I would say 4 of 1.
You prefer 4 glasses of wine and 1 cup of coffee to 2 cups of each. Okay, fine. So I'm going to mark that point right there. And so I know, so we don't have a point of indifference, but we know that this point is referred to this point. So how do I know that these points up here can't be on the indifference curve? Well, so there's going to be more than one step here. So we know that let's call this point A, let's call this point B, let's call this point C. So we know that C is referred to B by what axiom? By non-satiation. And Wes has told us that he prefers this point B to this point A. So by what principle do we know that points here are preferred to points here? Transitivity. Excellent. Okay, you guys are great. All right, so let me keep going. So I'm going to cut back on your alcohol consumption here a little bit and ask you about a point involving 3 glasses of wine and 1 cup of coffee. And we'll say that's about right, close enough. Okay, so looking at the point, the arrow there, that's 1 cup of coffee, 3 glasses of wine. Do you prefer this point or 2 and 2? You prefer 3 and 1? Okay, very good. Okay, so we can rule out those points as well, just using exactly the same argument as we had previously. Okay, so now I'm going to go a different direction. I'm going to cut down. I'm going to leave your proposed wine consumption at 3, but I'm going to cut your coffee. I'm only going to give you a 1/2 cup of coffee. Which point do you prefer?
Over the 2-2.
Yeah, so do you prefer? Yeah, over 2-2, exactly.
2 and 2.
Okay, so Wes prefers 2 cups of coffee and 2 glasses of wine to 3 glasses of wine and 1/2 cup of coffee. Okay, so that's nice. We ruled out this using a similar argument to what we did before. We know that all the points down here he prefers this point to anything down here by non-satiation, and he prefers this point to this one. I'm sorry, he prefers this point to anything down here by transitivity. Okay. All right, so let's keep going here. Let's go up in this segment. What if I give you 4 cups of coffee and 1 glass of wine? How does that compare to your original point?
I would prefer 2-2.
You prefer 2-2. Okay, just a second. Let me get my marker position correctly. That's pretty close. You prefer 2-2. Okay, fine. So we're going to rule out that. So everything that's just taking stock of where we are here, everything that's in black can't be on the indifference curve, on Wes's indifference curve that also passes through 2-2. Okay, let's keep going. How about